Ever heard of the Los Angeles Chinatown Massacre of 1871? It's not a question you hear every day, nor a topic that's widely discussed in history classrooms. Yet, it's an event that carries significant weight in the annals of Los Angeles and the Chinese American community. In the heart of the 19th century, on October 24, 1871, a violent riot erupted in Los Angeles, targeted squarely at its Chinese residents. The death toll remains uncertain, with at least 17 Chinese immigrants known to have perished, though some suggest the actual number could be higher. The roots of this horrifying event stretch back into the racial tensions and economic rivalries that were simmering in Los Angeles during the late 1800s. Chinese immigrants lured to California by the allure of gold and later as inexpensive labor for industries like railroad construction were made scapegoats for the economic difficulties faced by white Americans. This event didn't just occur out of the blue. Anti-Chinese sentiment had been steadily on the rise in the months leading up to the massacre. Chinese immigrants faced discrimination, violence, and harassment fueled by economic downturns and political agitation against Chinese immigration. The Los Angeles Chinatown Massacre of 1871 wasn't an isolated event, but a climax of simmering tensions and hostilities. It stands as a chilling testament to the virulent racism and xenophobia that permeated society during the 19th century. Let's delve into this dark chapter of history, shall we? To understand the massacre, we first need to trace back to the Gold Rush era. The mid-19th century saw a significant influx of Chinese immigrants to California, lured by the promise of gold and the prospect of a better life. This was a time when the American economy was expanding rapidly and there was a pressing need for cheap labor. The Chinese immigrants filled this void, working diligently in the gold mines, on the railroads, and in other strenuous industries. However, their presence was not welcomed by everyone. As their numbers grew, so did the economic competition, leading to mounting racial tensions. Many white Americans, feeling threatened by this new workforce, began to view the Chinese immigrants as scapegoats for their economic hardships. These feelings of resentment and fear were further inflamed by political agitation and economic downturns. In particular, the passage of the 1870 Naturalization Act, which explicitly barred Chinese immigrants from becoming naturalized citizens, amplified these tensions. This legislation effectively marginalized the Chinese community, placing them in a precarious position where they were vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. The situation in Los Angeles was no different. Anti-Chinese sentiment had been steadily escalating in the months leading up to the massacre. Chinese immigrants were subjected to widespread discrimination, violence, and harassment. They were viewed as threats to the livelihoods of white residents, who saw them as competitors for jobs, resources, and social standing. In this climate of hostility and fear, the Chinese community found itself isolated and under siege. They were caught in a storm of racial prejudice and economic competition, with no legal protections or avenues for redress. With each passing day, the situation became more volatile, the animosity more palpable. As tensions simmered, the stage was set for a tragic event. An event that would expose the depth of the racism and xenophobia that had taken root in Los Angeles, and leave an indelible mark on the history of the Chinese American community. An event that would come to be known as the Los Angeles Chinatown Massacre of 1871. A confrontation between two rival Chinese factions was the spark that ignited the massacre. This was not a dispute born out of political ideology or territorial claims, but rather a bitter rivalry over a Chinese woman forced into prostitution. In the heart of Los Angeles' Chinatown, these factions, known as the Tong organizations, clashed violently. The discord quickly escalated, spilling over into the quiet streets of the city. This confrontation, while severe, was not unfamiliar to the Chinese community, who had long been navigating the complex web of Tong relationships. However, what happened next was unprecedented. The violence and disorder provided the perfect pretext for a mob of white vigilantes to act on their simmering resentment and prejudice. Armed and emboldened, they descended upon Chinatown, their minds clouded with fear, anger, and a deep-seated animosity towards the Chinese immigrants. Among this mob were members of the city's own law enforcement, sworn to protect all citizens, yet they too were swept up in this wave of hatred. Their presence legitimized the mob's actions, further escalating the situation. The stage was set, The players were in position, and all it took was this spark to ignite the terrifying events that were about to unfold. The spark ignited, and Chinatown was about to be engulfed in chaos. On October 24, 1871, Chinatown descended into a nightmare. The sun fell below the horizon, but the night was far from peaceful. The streets of Chinatown, usually bustling with life, were clouded with fear and chaos. As the clock ticked, a mob, armed to the teeth, descended upon the unsuspecting residents. This was no ordinary crowd. It was a mob fueled by prejudice and hatred, their minds clouded by fear of the unknown. They were not there to protest or to negotiate. They were there to eradicate, to eliminate what they saw as a threat to their livelihoods. And so, the massacre began. The mob moved like a wave of destruction, leaving devastation in its wake. They stormed through the streets, their faces twisted with rage. They crashed into homes and businesses, their only objective, to wreak havoc on those they deemed different. The Chinese immigrants, the targets of this onslaught, were largely defenseless. They were not soldiers or warriors. They were miners, laborers, shopkeepers, mothers, fathers, and children. They were ordinary people who had come to this new land in search of a better life. Yet they found themselves in the midst of a nightmare, facing an enemy fueled by ignorance and fear. The violence was indiscriminate. Men, women, and children were assaulted without mercy. Buildings were looted and set ablaze, the sky tainted with flickering orange and choking smoke. The screams of the terrorized echoed through the night, a haunting melody that would reverberate through the annals of history. Yet in the face of such brutality, there were acts of courage. Many tried to fight back, to protect their loved ones, their homes. Others sought to hide, to shelter in place, hoping the storm would pass. Some managed to escape, fleeing to neighboring towns or the countryside, carrying with them the horrific memories of that fateful night. A night of terror ended, leaving Chinatown in ruins and its residents in shock. The massacre of 1871 was a horrific chapter in the history of Los Angeles, a stark reminder of the destructive power of prejudice and fear. Yet it also stood as a testament to the resilience and courage of the Chinese American community, a community that, despite the odds, refused to be silenced or erased. In the aftermath, justice was elusive. The dust settled over the ruins of Chinatown, the silence punctuated only by the echoes of the horrors that had transpired. The massacre had ended, but for the Chinese American community, the ordeal was far from over. The Los Angeles Chinatown Massacre of 1871 left deep scars, not just on the landscape, but on the collective psyche of the Chinese American community. The loss was immense, both in terms of lives and property. Yet, as they picked up the pieces of their shattered lives, the survivors faced an equally harrowing reality: the lack of accountability and justice. Despite the widespread outrage and condemnation, the wheels of justice turned agonizingly slow and, in the end, failed to deliver any semblance of justice. The few individuals arrested and tried for their involvement in the violence walked free. The courts, the very institutions meant to uphold justice, seemed to have turned a blind eye. A chilling reminder of the systemic injustices faced by the Chinese American community. The massacre was not just an isolated incident of violence, it was a manifestation of the deep-seated racism and xenophobia that permeated American society during the 19th century. The Chinese immigrants who had come to the United States in search of a better life found themselves caught in the crosshairs of prejudice and discrimination. Yet in the face of such adversity, the Chinese American community remained resilient. They endured, they rebuilt, and they persevered. The massacre, while a tragic chapter in their history, became a symbol of their resilience and spirit. It served as a stark reminder of the struggles and sacrifices they had endured, and a testament to their determination to seek justice and equality. Through the ashes of the massacre, the Chinese American community emerged stronger, their spirit unbroken. They carried with them the memories of those lost, a reminder of the price they paid, and the resolve to ensure that such horrors would never be repeated. Yet in the face of such adversity, the Chinese American community remained resilient. The Los Angeles Chinatown Massacre of 1871 is more than just a dark chapter in history. It's a testament to the remarkable resilience and indomitable spirit of the Chinese American community, who, in the face of such brutal adversity, refused to be silenced or erased. From the ashes of that horrific event, they rose, rebuilding their lives and their community, and setting a precedent of strength and courage for future generations. This event is also a significant milestone in the ongoing fight for justice and equality in American society. It starkly illuminates the systemic injustices and virulent racism that once permeated our nation, and the need for continuous vigilance and action to prevent such atrocities from happening again. The legacy of the Los Angeles Chinatown Massacre is profound, serving as both a sobering reminder of our past and an inspiration for our future. A grim reminder of our past, yet a beacon of hope for a more inclusive future.